Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where we educate, enlighten, and entertain. Folks, I'm going to do a couple of public service announcements before I announce my wonderful guest. June is Brain and Alzheimer's Awareness Month, and it is also Gay Pride Month, LGBTQA plus month. And from my very first video I did in my car to raise awareness on Alzheimer's and other dementias, I said we need to come out of our dementia closet. We need to shine a light, put a spotlight on caregivers and our loved ones and say we are here, put a name and a face to this horrid disease so people can see it. And I have said many times we need to take a lesson from our brothers and sisters in the gay community. We need a stonewall. We need to say we've had enough and declare war on a cure for Alzheimer's and other dementias. And that's my soapbox. So I just get very passionate, and I'm not going to apologize for it. With me today, and you're going to want to listen to this podcast, folks, I have a very special guest with me today. I'm very happy to discuss this topic, the subject, which on Chatting with Betsy, there are no taboos. I want everyone to know that. It's only taboo in your own mind, not on Chatting with Betsy. Everybody is welcome. And speaking of, before I forget, I have a support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. I want to reach out to the gay community. If you have Alzheimer's or any other dementia, you're looking for a support group, come join mine. I welcome all people from all walks of life. And my guest today is Ashley Rose Corder. She is a licensed clinical social worker, keynote speaker, a New York Times best-selling author. She wrote a book, Sam is My Sister. It's her debut children's picture book about her 3 children, one who is transgender. Welcome, Ashley, to Chatting with Betsy.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I have so many questions to ask you. First of all, thank you for coming on. Thank you for writing this book. How did you come about writing this book? Sam is My Sister.
Well, Sam is My Sister is a book about my own family, and I've always used writing and literature as a way for me to process the world around me. I actually grew up in foster care, and my previous 2 books, 3 Little Words and 3 More Words, were memoirs about my experiences growing up in the foster care system and then ultimately becoming a foster and adopted parent and licensed clinical social worker myself. So my own adverse childhood experiences are ultimately what inspired me to become a social worker and an advocate. And our eldest child, Sam, is adopted from the foster care system. My husband and I cared for over 20 kiddos, and we happened to have the opportunity to adopt Sam. And so a lot of my advocacy and other books were rooted in child welfare and adoption and best practices for helping to support children in schools or the communities. And, these are kids who come from untraditional backgrounds. And so I guess advocacy was just always such a part of me as a human being and a social worker. And then when Sam was just a toddler, we started noticing that Sam was very different than our other kiddos. Sam was assigned male at birth, and yet was constantly drawn to things very typically associated with femininity. And unlike our other two kiddos, Sam, when we would go to the library, every time Sam would pick out a book about princesses or sparkles or rainbows or pink. And when we were in the store, Sam would beeline to, the quote, girls section. And so these, we were like, well, kids are kids, whatever. We were very open. And so we started filling our library in our home with more diverse books. And we wanted to never shame any of our children. In our family, we believe that clothes are clothes, books are books, toys are toys. We don't really adhere to specific, boys only can play football or have sports equipment. Or, it's like whatever. Kids just get to express themselves in whatever creative ways they choose. And so we were always just very kind of watchful, but, let our kids do them. But when Sam started school, started a preschool at 3, so was at the same school for preschool through kindergarten, and the teachers also started noticing these strong preferences. But a big turning point and what made us really start digging deeper into what might be going on is we got a call from the school, and they were on the playground, and the teacher says, okay, kids, time to go inside. Girls in one line, boys in the other. And Sam turned to the teacher and said, where do I go? And this was in preschool. So, we had a conversation with the school, and as a clinical social worker, I started diving more into these issues. We talked to a pediatrician. I talked to colleagues and friends, and we are very big believers in mental health and support. And so I reached out to colleagues and was doing my own research, both as a clinical social worker, but also a mother. And what was so shocking to me was this idea that and at this point, we weren't labeling, we were just exploring. And what was so staggering was that for children who don't identify on the binary, so like what our society deems as boy and girl, for kids who might have a little more what they call fluidity, they have such higher risks for suicide, self-harm, depression, anxiety. And even when we finally learned and Sam was able to tell us that she felt she was transgender, and I'll tell you how we got to that place as well. But once we started digging into what it means to be trans, talking to other trans adults and youth and getting into support groups and all the things, what was so shocking was basically from a clinical perspective and a parental perspective, the one thing that was repeated over and over and over, the big threshold was, how do we keep these children alive? And that just shook me to my core, because so many professionals said, look, if your child is gay, if your child is trans, non-binary, however they identify, you can either have and accept that child and have a healthy, happy child, or you risk the possibility of having a dead child if you continue to force them or deny them who they are. And so for us, there was never a question other than, leading with love. What do we need to learn and to educate ourselves to be the most supportive of our child in whatever package, whatever form, whatever expression that might be? And so that's something that I talk to families a lot about, is that all of our kiddos are unique in various ways, but we have to lead with love. And even if it's something intimidating, something new, something we don't understand, there are so many resources out there that can help inform what's going on in families. And so we jumped in and started filling our library with even more books about diversity. Some of our favorites were books like Sparkle Boy and Jacob's New Dress and My Princess Boy, and, you know, these books that celebrated little boys that, you know, like to dress up. And so these were wonderful books, but not, you know, Sam enjoyed them, but something still didn't quite fit. So our huge aha moment was when we, as a family, read a wonderful children's book called I Am Jazz. And Jazz Jennings is an unbelievable, and her family, she's a major figurehead in the trans community and has brought so much education. They have a reality show, several books. They're just a wonderful family to follow and learn from. But in Jazz's children's book, it talks very plainly about being transgender. And so when we were reading this book, I mean, Sam's eyes lit up like we had never seen. And Sam turns to us and says, "Mommy, that's me. I'm transgender." And it was so powerful. Like, finally, it was a click. Finally, Sam had the word and the language that really fit what they were feeling and experiencing. So that was really powerful. And then once we had this really strong preference and Sam was like, "Whoa, this is it," then we were able to start learning more about the trans community and ways to support our child. And also in doing that, we worked with the school and the community and our family. And so once we kind of had the words to use and understood more clearly what Sam was feeling and going through, we were able to find the resources that would ultimately help support Sam and our whole family. And it's just been such a wonderfully powerful learning experience. And now a bulk of the cases that I have and see in my clinical practice are LGBTQ plus youth. So this has become another passion for me. And it's just incredible to see this child blossom and grow. And so Sam, as my sister, is the story of what our family experienced as Sam was going through this social transition. And there's a really big myth and misunderstanding out there. There are people who think that when children transition, that means something medical, but it doesn't. So for Sam, what that transition looked like is called a social transition, and not all trans people will even medically transition at all. That's a totally different thing. So for Sam, it meant wearing clothes that she liked. She was very insistent that she be referred to as a girl and have her, she, her pronouns. And so it was simply that. And luckily, though I changed the names of the children in the book, Sam was a gender-neutral name. So some families, the kiddos will change their names. But really, it's just letting our kiddo be who they are and respecting that and helping the teachers and community members and family members to understand what that looks like. And it's just so powerful to see Sam living her best self and doing her thing. And again, all of this started in toddlerhood. And now Sam is 9 and hasn't wavered in her identity once. And so that's what they say about kiddos who are trans, is that it's insistent, persistent, and consistent. And that's exactly what we experience. So we are just one story of many. No two trans experiences are the same. So if you've met one trans kiddo, you've met one trans kiddo. And so it's been awesome to meet other families who have similar shared experiences as we. And it's also fascinating to meet people who have transitioned in adulthood or just so many different people, but I just mostly encourage people to learn and explore and have an open heart and an open mind, because there is so much hateful legislation and things happening around the country, so much misinformation about this community. And so I hope that a book like Sam is My Sister will help teach even the youngest of children compassion and kindness, and give language and words to the people that they have in their classroom, to the families that might look a little different than theirs. And mostly I hope that this would maybe be inspiring to other people in a similar way that some of the children's books I mentioned earlier were very inspiring and helpful to our family.
I got chills. Ashley, you said you're so powerful, and I totally admire you as a mom, as a clinical social worker, to want to help your child, to want to encourage and be there, and to accept your child as he or she, is, and to be an advocate. We all become advocates because of something that is going on in our lives, right?
Yes,
I became an advocate for Alzheimer's because my husband, and we all learned then to be an advocate. And you are right. There is way too much hate in this world, and I wish I had a megaphone, but I do. I have my show. And I always say, even if you don't agree with someone's lifestyle, and no one's asking people to, you don't have to bully them. There's no reason to be unkind and cruel and to bully someone and to injure them because of the way he or she lives their life. And that's just how I feel. And
there's this really funny meme going around because June is, National Pride Month, and there's this funny meme going around that says, if you have a problem with gay marriage, well, when someone of the same sex asks you to marry them, just say no. And this can be a very intimidating topic, but I can tell your audience, from a parent with a very young trans child who socially transitioned very early, there's nothing scary about these kids. These trans kids, they're not stealing opportunities or scholarships So if you identify as the gender you were assigned at birth, it's called cis, CIS. So trans kids are not stealing opportunities from cisgendered kiddos. Sam is in, Sam is just a kid who has likes and dislikes and definitely does not like broccoli but likes kale. And, you hear about these big scary issues, but Sam and so many of the other young people we've had the opportunity to meet, these are just incredible kiddos. Fabulous resources for people who are interested in learning more about these issues or how they can be helpful. I was very, very honored, my husband and I, to be able to join the Human Rights Campaign as a Parents for Transgender Equality Council. So through the Human Rights Campaign, we've learned about unbelievable programs that help support all children, all families, and we've met other trans kiddos. Some of them are very active in their communities. I think this whole generation is so unique in that their voices are so powerful, and they're activists, and they are outspoken, and they are interested in social justice and all of these issues. And so they're sharing their stories, and they're trying to make a difference in the world, which is so, so powerful. But the Human Rights Campaign has awesome resources for parents, for educators, for child welfare professionals. One of the programs is called Welcoming Schools, and the website is welcomingschools.org. You can go there and find tons of recommendations for different books about diversity, LGBTQ families, inclusion, acceptance, like all of these, anti-bullying. These are themes that all children should be learning. It's not a hidden agenda. It's making sure that kids feel seen and loved and affirmed for who they are. Maybe it's a kiddo that has a single mom or a dad, or a kid that's being raised by grandparents, a kid that has two moms, two dads. There are so many different families, and in this day and age, we really should be embracing others around us, different cultures, different beliefs. Having beauty in those differences is what makes a cohesive, happy society. And another program HRC has taken on is called All Children, All Families, and that really speaks to me because that's a training that's specifically designed for social workers and child welfare professionals who work with kids who have experienced foster care or adoption, and they go in and do various trainings and make sure that agencies are best equipped with best practices to know how to work with families and create the most opportunities for children to find permanent loving homes, which as an adoptee myself is something that really speaks to me. So if you're a teacher or an educator or a parent, definitely check out the welcomingschools.org offerings because they are just a wealth of resources. And Welcoming Schools actually did a lesson prompt and reading guide for Sam is My Sister, which is really so precious. And they have a lot of different tools that are very applicable for classrooms, including free printables and stickers you can have in your classroom and opportunities to have visuals that indicate to kids and families that you are a safe adult and you are someone who will honor them and can be trusted, because being trans and being a kiddo or being identifying as queer or whatever it is, it is so imperative that they feel like they have safe adults that they can trust, that they can rely on, and that they can be safe with.
I agree, and thank you for providing names of resources, because this is what Chatting with Betsy is about. It's about providing people with resources that I didn't know about, and I certainly didn't know, and for other people to know and get involved. Ashley, I have to ask you, how did your other children, how do they react to Sam?
Well, and that's part of what was happening. I talk a lot about this in the book, and my other kiddos are younger, and at first it was very confusing. My very littlest kiddo is very kind of go with the flow and was like, oh, okay, pass the broccoli, pass the mashed potatoes.
Right.
They loved their sibling, and that was that. And so that was really powerful. Our other son is much more facts and figures, very serious, and I think it took him a long time to really understand. But again, now we are so lucky that there is a wealth of children's books and literature and examples in the world that really help break down these sometimes complicated topics in ways that kids can understand. There's a whole series of books coming out. It's a big series that's called A Kid's Book About, and they have a kid's book about anxiety or depression or divorce or different topics. And Gender Cool Project has partnered with some young people, and there's 3 new books coming out that also talk about what it means to be non-binary, what it means to be trans. And so, again, just more than ever before, you can go online to Amazon or wherever you like to buy books and find so many resources that provide age-appropriate ways to explain some of these topics and give examples to kids. So it didn't take very long for Sam's siblings to see a difference in Sam. Once Sam got to be Sam, it shifted her personality. She was happier. She was, more playful, and it's a visible difference. When you affirm these children for who they are, you will notice the difference in their school, in their productivity, in their just general happiness, and it's such a measurable difference that even Sam's younger siblings could understand and could get it. And you want the people that you love to be happy, and this was very obviously what makes Sam happy. And so they were really ultimately able to get on board very easily.
That is so awesome. I worked at a preschool, and I tell people, children don't care who they play with. They really don't. It's the adults who teach the bigotry, if you like a better word, and the ugliness. And as you're talking, I'm thinking of two young boys that went to the preschool, and one liked to dress in the princess outfits, and he said he loved the color purple, and then I thought of one who he would bring a Barbie doll, and he, was very feminine. And, I'm wondering if they are transgender at this point, which is a long time ago, or if they, decided to, to be gay, or if they're transgender, but you can't see it young. And the other children didn't think anything of it. And we as staff, we don't discourage imaginative play or what they come in, with, or what they choose to play with. They play with whatever they play with.
Absolutely. And but also these gender norms are ingrained in our kiddos so early that it kind of catches you off guard. We have a little 3-year-old boy in our clinical program, and my husband's, one of his favorite work shirts is like the super bright pink shirt. And he wore this shirt, and the little boy's like, "Mr. Eric, you can't wear pink. That's a girl's color." And he was like, "Buddy, colors are just color. This is one of my favorite shirts." And it blew this kid's mind that a man could be wearing pink. And this was a 3-year-old. And so I think that just shows you how our society lives in these very binary terms. And so if we can start embracing, and just because your 4-year-old son likes to wear dresses, that doesn't necessarily mean they're gay or trans or anything. We just have to listen to kids, provide them for the space to be who they are. And some people were like, "Well, how do you know this isn't with Sam?" They say, "Oh, well, this is just a phase." And I'm like, "Okay, well, we're going on 5 years now, so this is clearly not a phase." And even if it were, then that behavior would change. And that was kind of part of what the professionals were advising. If they were like, "Let Sam do Sam, go on a family vacation and let Sam dress the way they want to dress and see what happens." And we did just that. We actually took her to Disney and let her pick out her outfit beforehand. And it was, a skirt and a ruffly top, and put little barrettes in her hair, and all through Disney, everyone responded to her like, "Oh, hi, Princess, hi." I mean, holy moly, you've never seen a child beam so proudly. And so, if a kid is not trans, that's maybe not going to be the outcome. So it's not making assumptions. Parents, do not panic. This stuff is not set in stone. It's just about creating a safe space for your child to let you know who they are, how they feel, and what makes them the happiest. And just, you can do that by having a variety of books in your library, by making sure that, let's say you see a non-binary person in the community, or you affirm that and say, "Oh, wow, they look really amazing." Have opportunities for your kids to have these discussions. And like you mentioned earlier, a lot of hate and prejudice and bigotry, those are taught. And these kids are sponges. They are watching and observing. And you as a parent have to be sure that your kids are going to feel safe enough to come to you about either their identity, or when they're in high school and get in trouble. It's like we just have to do what we need to do to be there for our kids, and they will tell us. They will let you know. And really, it's just giving it time. And that's kind of what we did. We're just waiting to see. We don't know what the future holds, but we are going to be there to support Sam and her siblings and our kids in whatever it is that makes them feel whole and healthy and happy.
I just love what you stand for, Ashley, and I love your passion, and I hear it, and I just admire you for it. I wish I could hug you right through the airwaves.
Air hug.
I got choked up with emotion because, everyone wants to be accepted for who they are. And, I grew up, I'm 63, I'm not ashamed to say it. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And I remember the, Stonewall riots. And I heard that my mom's cousin was thrown out of his house because he was gay. And I can't imagine, I'm a parent, I can't imagine throwing my child out for who he decided to love.
Right.
That's just, I couldn't even go there in my mind. But, and growing up in the time that I grew up in, yes, blue was for boys, pink was for girls, and you didn't put a boy in pink. You didn't give a boy a doll. But this is how the environment that I was raised in. So my son's an only child, and when he wanted a brother or sister, I bought him, it was at that time, my buddy doll. Oh, my husband had a fit. Oh, did he have a conniption because I brought Joshua a doll. And, he said some very, and I won't even repeat it, some things that I don't agree with. But, it was a boy doll. And why can't a boy have a doll other than G.I. Joe? My husband had at the time in no trouble G.I. Joe doll, macho, gun-toting. Why can't a boy have a doll? Why can't they learn to be nurturing? Why can't they learn to be compassionate? And this is something that I just, taught with my son, that, you should have these traits and accept people for who they are. And I just, want to thank you for coming on, Ashley, and sharing your story about Sam and giving these resources, because it's so important. And I, use my show as a platform for other people to tell their stories and share their stories without fear, because we all need to be heard, and we all have a story to tell. And I did grow up in the 60s and 70s, so my mentality is, love up on each other. We all are the same inside. We need to stop the hate and stop this disgusting hatred where people are so full of hate that they do others harm. It's not acceptable, and we need to stop it. And I just want to thank you.
And educate ourselves. Please
educate,
do your research.
Yes.
Yeah, find reliable sources and meet actual trans adults. Meet children. There are so many stories out there. Watch I Am Jazz. These are prime examples of who these people are, and they are just people that are mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters, or if they don't identify on the binary, it's they, it's them, it's everyone who wants to be loved, has love to give. And I think it's our responsibility as citizens to lean with that love and learning and understanding, and before we pass judgment, truly educate ourselves on, is this helpful? Is this honest? Is this going to be harmful? And if your belief system is one that imposes hatred or harm or cruelty on another human being, perhaps it's time to reassess, how we can better be advocates and help children and families thrive and ultimately survive, because that's what it is. When these kids are not supported, the outcomes can be very dire, and that just never needs to happen.
Absolutely. I agree 100%, Ashley. Ashley, how can people, you said your book is available on Amazon.
Yes.
How can
so my
people...
books are
oh, go ahead.
They're available wherever your favorite place to buy books are. If people are interested in getting a hold of me, Sam is My Sister has its own social media pages at Sam is My Sister on Instagram, Facebook, or my personal handles at Rhodes Quarter, RHODES. COURTER, or my website, rhodes-quarter.com. And I'm Ashley.
Thank you so much. You just inspired me. Thank you for coming on and sharing. And I say it all the time. People, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind, because we need it now more than ever. Thank you, Ashley, for coming on and sharing your book and your story. And Ashley's going to come on again. I want her on in November to talk about her experience growing up in the foster child care system, which I never covered. So I will be covering that. So that's why you need to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, because you don't know who I'm going to have on or what topic I am going to, or my guest is going to talk about. I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, CEO, Passionate World Talk Radio Network, who sent me the press release about Ashley and Ashley's book, Sam is My Sister. So thank you to Lillian, and thank you to Jeannie White, station manager, who produces the show and writes the blog. Please read the blog, because it will have the information. And please share this podcast to help others, because that is what Chatting with Betsy is about. It's about helping other people. And we do need to learn in the society and all over the world to accept people for who they are, how they are, and to love them. And that is, I think, love is the basic tenet of beliefs. And I'm going to get political here, religious, whatever you want to call it. If your belief system is teaching you to hate and to do harm to others, then maybe you need to reassess, okay? Because nowhere is it right to take another human being's life because you don't agree with their lifestyle. And yes, I do get passionate about it. Or what their ethnic origin is. Doesn't have to be lifestyle. It could be the color of their skin. It could be their ethnic origin. Nobody has a right to take another life because you don't like it. And if you want to send me hate mail, go right ahead. I don't care. I'm going to speak my mind because I'm a Jersey girl, and I'm my dad's daughter who taught me to stand my ground. Well, thank everyone for listening. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy at Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Be kind, everybody. Bye-bye.
Do you want to become a talk show host? Do you have a great idea? Passionate World Talk Radio is currently looking for podcast hosts for our Internet Talk Radio station. Please email us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com with your name, email address, cell phone number, and podcast topic. In return, you will receive a 3-minute intro on air to a live audience about your podcast. Remember, just email us your name, email address, and your podcast topic, and in return, you will receive a free 3-minute intro on the air. How cool is that? Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.